Year was 1992. The East Penn Conference was loaded with special players and teams that were all considered championship contenders. Bethlehem Catholic had the likes of Dan Kendra, Chad Breidinger, Brian Baker. Central Catholic, Tim Cramsey, Jose Delgado, Rashawn Drayton. Easton had this young man named Juan Gaddy, who was in the midst of rushing for over 5,000 career yards, which would be an East Penn Conference record. And oh, by the way, Phillipsburg was still a big contender within the East Penn Conference, but it would be the two Allentown schools that would rise to the top of the standings, setting up an 8-day, 2-game schedule that would determine both the league and District 11 4A championships. The Huskies, of course, won round one. They just celebrated that championship a couple of weeks ago. Allen would win round two in the district title by a count of 14-7. Pleased to be joined by head coach Rich Snizak, Danny Pichardo, and James Reimert. Coach, hard to believe it's 30 years, huh?
And where does the time go?
30 years down the road. These guys in the beards are showing that. Obviously a special 8-day, and you were around the Allentown School District as a youngster, a head coach, an administrator. It was really a special 8-day period.
Yeah, certainly. In 60 years that I've been alive and been part of Allen-Dura football, those 2 weeks were probably the most prominent in the history of both schools to date, unfortunately to date. But they were very exciting, and the culture at both schools at that time was just off the charts.
I see you still got the yellow tie, and I was even able canary and blue today, right?
I went in Rome, right?
That's right. James Reimert, of course, you were a senior on that team. How was the reunion, and what was it like to see some of those guys on Saturday at the most recent Allen-Dura game?
And it was great. It was some of the guys looked they still could play.
You being one of them, by the way.
I try to stay in shape, and I got an older son, and I have a younger son that kind of started over, and he keeps me busy. So,
yeah, it keeps you. How much of a motivator was it after you got beat by Duriff in the league championship, and then 8 days later you got another chance at him and won 14-7? How big of a motivator was that for that whole week going into the district final?
Well, the first game we kind of hurt ourselves, turnovers and misplays and all that. So, coaches got on us that week and worked us. So that alone was enough to, get out there and want to take it out on Duriff. I'm
not surprised to hear you say the coaches got on you and worked you. That's kind of what I figured. Danny Pichardo, also a senior, had a big 80-yard kick return in the first Allen-Dura game, but then it kind of got away from you guys a little bit until you regrouped late. Almost were able to pull out that win in game one.
Yeah, I think we ran out about 8 to 10, about 10 seconds short. But if we had another player, it would have been a different outcome. But it was a great opening. The energy was there. Something we haven't mentioned yet was the crowd, perhaps in the crowd.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
The energy in the crowd.
13,000 in the first one.
And I remember seeing the crowd and just being so impressed about the numbers of it. So it was a pretty impressive day.
Yeah, certainly a highlight. We're going to talk more about that 92 District 11 championship team. Pleased to be joined by a couple of Duriff grads in the house. Sam Houseel, a graduate as well. Coach Snizak, a graduate of Duriff, and I might have found my way around the hallways there as well. Coach mentioned 30 years. What was it about this group? And I mentioned all the other teams. I mean, Becca was in the midst of, they had already won 2 state titles. Central, of course, was getting ready to become the dominant program in the 90s. What was it about Allen and Duriff back in 92 that set them apart from the rest of them?
Well, I think we had really special athletes, first and foremost. And, we were gifted with skilled talent at Allen. The two guys here, and Jimmy Gillespie, the quarterback, Chris Mason, Todd Stallnecker, Nate Hobgood-Chittick, Hassan DeJesus. We really had a lot of weapons to tap into, and Duriff likewise had good skills.
Yes,
too.
they did.
They played different style. They were a little more physical and bigger up front than we were. So I think we had great quickness. Duriff had more strength, and those two made for a good matchup. And I think it's to date, it's probably been one of the most gratifying moments I've had in coaching.
I was going to ask you that.
And we also had a great staff. I mean, many of the coaches on that staff, Andy Baranek, Dave Wildonger, went on to be head coaches. My father was a former head coach, was on the staff. Keith Falco was the freshman coach. He was a principal at Allen and an administrator. Ted Phillips, longtime educator in the Allentown School District. Andy Poloni went on to be an AD in the Allentown School District, coached at Whitehall for years. So we really had some great role models for the kids and professional educators involved with working with them from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock daily. And I think it showed great promise.
It really takes a village to be successful in the sport of football. There's no doubt about it. You mentioned your dad, obviously a former head coach at Allen High School. I think I know the answer to this question. I mean, you went on to be a head coach at Parkland, the athletic director, superintendent of schools. What kind of impact and influence did your dad have on you taking that career path?
Oh, it's certainly the most influential person in my life.
Yeah.
But there's been many others too. But my father ranks number one, and he had a profound impact on me as not only an educator but as a person in general, and my mom, to help formulate my morals and my character.
Yeah. Always takes a leader. James Reimert, the coach, mentioned Nate Hobgood-Chittick. We lost that young man far too early. He would go on to win a Super Bowl championship. What did the leadership, and you were a senior as well, but Nate Hobgood-Chittick, what did he mean to this program overall? I know he was a first-team All-Stater defensive end, but he was more than that to this football program.
His work ethic was phenomenal, because he would tell you, I don't have all the talent and all that, but he was going to work harder than anybody to get where he needed to be. So that, I think, was the main thing with Nate.
He certainly did that. James Reimert, who was a senior running back, scored 8 touchdowns his senior year, but the one remembered perhaps most by Allen faithful may have come in his junior year. 1991, he returned an interception return for 102 yards against Freedom. That's got to be one of the highlights of your career, I would think.
Yeah, it was. It was at that time, actually, it was 103.
It was 103. The record book has it 102.
At that time, I believe it was a national record, and then I was going to my oldest son's games at Liberty, and I think of one of the kids from Freedom had 2 interceptions for touchdowns, longer than both of them that year were longer than that. So, but yeah, it was great. It was great.
James, at what point during the year, I mean, you opened up, you beat Northampton, lost to Freedom in week 2, then rattled off 4 wins in a row, Easton, Phillipsburg, Parkland, Whitehall, tied Becca, and then at the end, and you were one of the defensive stalwarts of this team. Then you had, I mean, you pitched a shutout, you allowed just 3 points, 8 points to Central Catholic, and then, of course, against Deeroff in the district final 7. What was it about the group defensively that came together for you?
All positions, we were great at all positions. I think talent, like Coach said earlier, we had the speed, and even the guys coming off the bench were really talented as well. So if we needed a break, we knew that whoever was coming in, was going to do the job they needed to do.
Yeah, that's for sure. Danny Pichardo, you were still a coach or a teacher at Allen High School. Do kids know what you were a part of back in the early 90s?
I try to share. I try to share.
I'm not surprised to hear that, by the way.
I let them know that there was success there, and it was it was a good time and all that. So yeah, I definitely share it, but I don't want to come off like
You got it. What was it like to get together with the guys on Saturday?
Oh God, it was great. It was great to see everybody and talk, and of course we become high school aged again and talk about those things. So the nostalgia has been great. But yeah, but we also focused on those that weren't here, of course. And I would like to say how Mr. Snizak, Coach's father, during when we met on Saturday, he had on the District 11 championship jacket, the coat.
Oh, is that right?
He pulled me aside. You know what? He mentioned so many details about things that took place at practice. And he mentioned things, and he said little one-liners. So it was pretty impressive to talk to him and hear him, somebody who can remember these details. Still sharp and memorable, pretty great.
Now, how about the coaching staff back there? Coach Snizek referenced that. How about the rest of the staff, and what kind of impact did it have on all you guys' lives?
Totally, we bought into the program. Everybody was there for us. I remember getting rides and being picked up and phone calls and being held accountable for all of my actions. And So it was pretty. It was nice. It was a family. It definitely was a family, and it was definitely one that you didn't want to cross, and definitely one you wanted to be supported by. So it was nice to be part of that group.
James, I mean, the Allen Diruff game spoke for itself in those days. I mean, it was one of the marquee games in all the Lehigh Valley. How were you able to re-energize yourself? I mean, you go through it once, you come up on the short end. How difficult was it to refocus and re-energize for the district final against the same opponent?
Not at all. We had to avenge that loss. So, because we knew we shouldn't have lost that game. We had it, but like I said, mental errors and penalties and turnovers, that hurt us. So, and at the end, like he said, that we had a couple more seconds and we would have pulled that out.
Yeah, you were driving. I looked at some of the video on it. You were getting closer as you were trying to overcome a pretty good deficit. Of course, Coach, for you, you coached over at Diruff. You guided the baseball program to a couple of district titles, and a good friend of yours was on the other sideline, Mike Marks. Sure. That had to be a tough couple of days for you.
Well, we were all Allen at that time, so we were. there was no.
Your alma mater didn't play into it. You didn't feel bad for your alma mater.
I wanted them to do well all the other weeks, but those 2 weeks, we were all Allen, and we have a good relationship still, and I was really happy.
He went in the Millersville Hall of Fame. You just said.
Yeah, Mike just was inducted in the Millersville Hall of Fame. That's an outstanding honor and well deserved. And, maybe next time we do this reunion, we get both teams together. I think it would be nice for the school district.
I tried it during the COVID deal, but we just couldn't make it all happen. We'll maybe try and do that for sure. Danny Pichardo, James Reimert, guys, congratulations. Really hope you enjoyed that reunion on Saturday at the Allen Diruff game.
Thank you.
House Seal and his band kind of debuting here on our show. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Wish you guys great success. We'll hear more from them. Pleased to welcome in now Jimmy Gillespie, who was the outstanding quarterback for the Canaries. 20 touchdown passes, more than anybody in the East Penn Conference South. He wasn't all league, but he threw more touchdowns. Jimmy, congratulations. What was it like to see the guys on Saturday?
It was like we never left each other.
Yeah.
Like 30 years later, and I don't know. It's hard to fathom that that I have something I can look back on 30 years later, and I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. And I mean, once you see everybody, all the coaches, it's like we never left.
Feels like it was yesterday, right?
Seriously.
Yeah, Kutztown and Robert Morris, you played a little bit of football at both there, but you really became big in adult league football. How much did the success you had this senior year playing for Allen influence you? And, I mean, you kept the adult football league around here going for quite some time. How did your success here affect you doing that?
Well, I mean, we had so many great athletes that were our age that we all stayed together.
I mentioned a few of them. It was phenomenal.
I mean, a lot of us stayed together, and it was right when we were becoming seniors is when Lehigh passing camp started, and Lafayette. We went there, and that's pass Skelly, receivers against D-backs without a rush. I mean, that's kind of what, as a quarterback, that's
you dream of.
That's a dream scenario. And then, I mean, that's kind of what, the flag football beyond that was. And like I said, I got James, Danny,
Hassan
DeJesus, Chris Mason.
Nate Hobgood-Chittick at the tight end.
I'm just saying, I mean, we had, we had great skill positions, and we all stayed friends for all these years, and just another way to stay together.
Rich, you had a reputation as a guy who didn't like to throw the football. How did you wind up with a quarterback who threw more touchdown passes than anybody?
I think when early on in my career, I had visions of being more distributive passing and running. But no, even this group, even though we didn't have the big linemen, we made them believe they could run the ball, and everything was built off the idea that we were going to run the football. And so to have a strong play action game was essential, and that allowed us to then evolve into a 3-step and 5-step
Yeah,
drop
you had a
team.
guy named Chris Mason, too, who could run the ball pretty well.
And Todd Stallnecker,
Todd
Danny,
Stallnecker was a good one,
James.
yeah, yeah.
We had a bunch of guys that could carry the ball.
Yeah, here I thought all along it was when you were the quarterback of that undefeated football team at Durham High School, and I thought that's where you got you just handed it to Dave Crisco. They wouldn't let you throw the ball, right?
Well, for
you
Bruce,
and I were the same. Yeah, right.
I was a glorified guard.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to. We were quarterbacks that weren't allowed to throw the football.
Right.
That was a beautiful thing there. What made him successful? How were you able to mold? I mean, he was a transfer from Durham, from the other side of town, but he was kind of the missing element for you guys.
Yeah, I think him and Coach Baranek, Andy Baranek was our quarterbacks coach at the time. They bonded real well, and we had like a nice West Coast scheme, intermediate short passing game that we could take advantage of.
That was very big in the game at that point.
It was, and we ran a lot of delay routes and things with the tight ends and the running backs out of the backfield, and that was right in Jimmy's wheelhouse. I mean, he handled that very well, and plus he was very smart. He could read defenses very well, so we were able to audible at the line of scrimmage and do some things to take advantage of the mismatches when they came.
And you guys were able to create them. Jimmy, we're running low on time here a little bit, but your fondest memories and what have you taken out of for moving on in your life from that '92 season with Allen High School?
I mean, it's tough to narrow it down, but like I guess I look at it as like those people that we shared that with. Like I said,
It's an amazing 2 to 3 month journey, isn't it?
I mean, we get back together on Saturday and like, I mean, you bond so crazy as when you're in a football locker room as a football team, and then to walk out like winning our last high school game together, like we still have that family. I mean, they're my brothers. And
I'm sure you would have liked to play another week. District champ didn't get an automatic bid in the state tournament. I'm sure you guys talk about that today too.
I mean, I really wish we could have seen what we could do against outside competition and like. I mean, running the gauntlet in the East Penn Conference back then.
It's tough.
I mean, like you mentioned all the players. I mean, like. I wish all the people that are playing growing up now, I mean, knew how good
some great names
those people were and the competition around here was, and like what Danny said about walking into the stadium. I mean, we had 15,000 plus people at both those games, and I mean, it was electric.
Great 8 days in the Allentown School District. Jimmy Gillespie, 20 touchdown passes as the Allen quarterback that year led the East Penn Conference. Jimmy, thanks for taking the time. Coach Snizak, congratulations. My best to mom and dad.
Thank you
Grandkids
very
now
much.
are all good.
Yep.
You're enjoying your retirement, right?
I certainly am.
So I have something to look forward to, right?
You do.
Someday.
You do.
Someday. Rich Snizak, Jimmy Gillespie, the 1992 District 11 4A football champion. Sam, how